now, just before we get to
Lie is my absolute favorite thing. I want to show you how, even though Nintendo does tend to stick to less cutting-edge tech in their machines, but it's also impossible to deny how much they've innovated in their own way. They were the first to bring in the concept of a D-pad
They were the first to bring up the concept of a D-pad
or directional pad. Funnily
pad.
enough, also engineered by our guy Gunpei. The same for the analog stick, which appeared on the N64 in 1996, before Sony or Sega could beat them to the punch. They mainstreamed the ability to save game progress on cartridges in the West. Instead of having to use floppy drives, they basically installed tiny batteries into the cartridges, which basically keep the game running in a really low power state when taken out, which is needed so that it doesn't reset to its original state without progress. These cartridge batteries have lasted 20-30 years, with grown adults even now carrying on their childhood save files. Nintendo made the first shoulder buttons, appearing on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System at a time where developers were scratching their heads thinking, what on earth do we do with all of these inputs? Which is funny because nowadays we have two times that. Nintendo introduced Controller Rumble in 1997 with the Rumble Pack for your N64 controller. Again, at a time where the idea of a controller that could vibrate interactively with what was happening in the game felt like a whole new unexplored dimension. So many big gaming features that we nowadays just take for granted. Nintendo were the ones who either invented them or popularized them. And then there was the Virtual Boy. And that was the first ever mass-produced virtual reality system, which is crazy. Considering that this is 1995 we're talking about, the year that I was born, but this was also a pretty good example of why you shouldn't always rush to be first. The Virtual Boy was VR, but long before VR was good enough to make the tech usable. It could only display images in black and red, which ended up giving people headaches. It launched with no good games because Nintendo was too busy prepping for the N64 that they knew would be a hit. And the main problem was that while initially conceived as a lightweight set of goggles that you could wear and take anywhere, the Virtual Boy ended up being so heavy that Nintendo had to build and ship a custom stand with it that required you to use it on a table and lean into it, making it a very literal pain in the neck. So we've talked a fair bit about the inventor, Gunpei Yokoi, but he isn't the only weirdly well-known Nintendo executive, because compared to other companies like Sony and Microsoft, who tend to keep one or two public-facing figures, Nintendo likes to put their developers at the front and center, to the point where they become almost as beloved as the company's actual characters, like Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the Super Mario and the Legend of Zelda games. Basically, the architect of a lot of people's childhoods. What I thought was so cool is that he created the original Zelda on NES as arguably the first open-world game because he wanted to give players the same feeling he had as a kid, exploring outdoors in his hometown. Especially the feeling of discovering a cave, i.e. the very first thing you do in the game to get your sword. Or like the current president of Nintendo of America, whose name is literally Doug Bowser. That's the fact. And fun as that is, even he has not yet lived up to the legendary meme overlord status of the previous president of Nintendo America, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Yeah, Reggie.
What?
I think it's actually pronounced Reggie Fils-Aimé, but I prefer my version.
So does Amy.
Who came in hard with his very first introduction to the fans at E3 2004. And it's not just this, Reggie has had a million other golden moments.